ever kindled within, let the second rite begin.
Welcome once again, my fellow manipulators of Digital Fate. I'm Richie, this is Capricorn, and today's deck is a spicy brew indeed. It's utilizing one of my favorite new cards from Kaldheim, Tergrid, God of Fright. This deck is Doom and Gloom. It is a Orzhov sort of Doom Foretold Tergrid deck that utilizes sacrifice and discard effects, and it splashes red for a really spicy inclusion that we'll get to. But before we get to the deck tech, please like and subscribe because it really helps the channel grow, and let's jump right into it. Alright, so first and foremost, I think this deck is probably one of the better decks poised for the current meta we're facing post-Kaldheim. So I'll get to why in a second. The core of the deck really revolves around, obviously, Tergrid. Now, Tergrid is a 5-drop 4/5 with Menace. It's a legendary creature god, and whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So the idea is, if you can slam Tergrid on the field and then make them sacrifice and discard things, you're going to get them. And we all know that stealing things from the opponent is a really powerful effect. It's basically a built-in 2-for-1 for anything that can make you have them sacrifice things or discard things. So, super powerful if we can get this to stick. The fact that Tergrid has a toughness of 5 helps her survive against all sorts of direct damage, helps her be a decent blocker if you're willing to risk it. So really, if you can get her to stick on the field and then continue to make your opponent sacrifice or discard things, you can gain so much value over the course of the game that your opponent can just never recover from it. And there's a bunch of ways this deck does that. But the reason that I specifically think Tergrid is really great in this current meta is two things. First off, every saga sacrifices itself when it finishes its final chapter, which means anytime your opponent plays sagas with Tergrid on the board, it doesn't even matter if you have a way to enable the Tergrid to steal things. You'll steal all the sagas that they play when they finally resolve their final chapter, which is just insane when you consider the fact that Kaldheim brought a ton of great sagas to the format. Everyone's looking for ways to abuse them, and they're everywhere. So, first of all, Tergrid is great in this meta because of that. Quick aside, I know that I'm mispronouncing saga. It should be saga, not saga, but I don't know, hashtag deal with it. Secondly, we're seeing Rakdos and to a smaller extent Jund sacrifice decks make a real big comeback. Crocs is a huge thing, and these sacrifice decks in particular, using some of the new cards, have been really doing super well on the ladder. So this deck really punishes that in that it doesn't matter if you have a way to enable Tergrid. If they're already sacrificing things or discarding things themselves to try to enable their own deck to do things, now all of a sudden you're stealing all their stuff. So I think this deck is awesome in the current meta. We're gonna break down the rest of it right now. The other side of Tergrid is Tergrid's Lantern. Now this is a 4-drop legendary artifact. You can tap it. Target player loses 3 life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. Pay 4 mana, untap Tergrid's Lantern. Now, the Lantern's also great, and obviously if you get both of these cards on the field at the same time, they totally are abusive together. It's an abusive relationship for sure. And it just does so much work, right? The clock this puts your opponent on is insane. If you have 4 mana up every turn, even if you're out of stuff to do, but you have a board that can stall them, you're just constantly ticking them down unless they sack things, and they can't possibly sack things or else you're going to take them. So the combo is insane, and that's why we don't mind running 4-ofs. You know, if we ever draw a second copy and we can't play it, we can play it as the other side. Also, this is a Yorion deck. which means that we can play the Lantern early. And then if we get Yorion in our hand, we can actually play Yorion and flicker Tergrid's Lantern. And when it comes back into play, it's going to come back into play as Tergrid, since Tergrid herself is the front side of the card, which is really, really fucking awesome. Like, if you get the Lantern down earlier and they have a hard time dealing with it because they don't have removal for artifacts, you can flicker it in a later turn and then just go to town. So what are the ways that we have to enable Tergrid? So first off, we've got 4 copies of Doom Foretold. Now, Doom Foretold decks have always been amazing, especially with Yorion, but with Tergrid in particular, it's absolutely busted. So we've got Doom Foretold as a 4-drop. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a non-land, non-token permanent. If that player can't, they discard a card, they lose 2 life, you draw a card, you gain 2 life, you create a 2/2 White Knight creature token with Vigilance, and you sacrifice Doom Foretold. So even if they don't have anything to sacrifice, they still have to give you a bunch of value here and discard something, which could also be something to steal. But if they do have things to sacrifice, you're taking them all. And what's cool about Doom Foretold is they have to sacrifice a non-token permanent, which means they can only sacrifice things that you can get from Tergrid when they sacrifice it. Awesome. Moving on, we've also got 1 Rankle. It's legendary, but if we can slam this guy on the field the turn before we slam a Tergrid, not only is he putting in work the turn he comes into play, but then he's ready to go the turn we play Tergrid, and we can make them sacrifice, we can make them discard, we can make them sacrifice and discard in the same turn. Rankle's actually a card that might go up to a 2, 3, or even 4 of, because it performs so well with Tergrid. We've got 1 Liliana, and she's great because you can uptick to make them discard. And it's really, really important to try to find ways to make the opponent discard or sacrifice without spending mana. So things like Rankle, Doom Foretold, Liliana that you can play on turn 4, and then follow that up with a turn 5 Doom Foretold, and then, in Liliana's case, have her already on the field ready to uptick and make them discard something right away. That way you don't have to wait a turn for her to survive their sorcery speed removal, and you can just start gaining value off her right away. We've also got 1 Legion Angel with 3 in the sideboard because it's just amazing in anything white, but especially in a deck like this where you're looking to fill the field with more permanents than your opponent, so you'll always have things to sacrifice. 1 Legion Angel that becomes 4 Legion Angels is just nuts. Also doubles as a win condition, absolutely great with Doom Foretold. In the 3-drop slot, we have 4 Elspeth's Nightmare, because you can take out some early aggro threats with Chapter 1, and then Chapter 2 makes them discard, and this creates a ton of value in the early game, but also if you drop it after a Tergrid, that discard is relevant in that if they discard a permanent, it's something you get. And then also, obviously, Chapter 3 will exile their graveyard, and that's really great because a lot of decks in the environment are utilizing their graveyard. So being able to wipe out their Croxes, any of their escape stuff, good stuff. We've also got 4 copies of Soul Shatter. This piece of removal was always pretty good in that it makes them get rid of their biggest threat on the table. It's 3 mana instant. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the highest converted mana cost among creatures and planeswalkers they control. So what's cool about this is it gets rid of their biggest thing. It gets around hexproof because you don't have to target, right? But it's even better with Tergrid and very abusable because as soon as Tergrid's in play, now you're stealing their most expensive thing, which is probably their best thing. And you can do it at instant speed, which means you can really line up some crazy plays. We have 1 Treacherous Blessing. This card is especially good with Yorion to blink and draw more cards, but we don't ever really want to be caught with our pants down with too many on the field at once and no way to get rid of them. So we do have the ability to sacrifice them to Doom Foretold, which is awesome, but I think just a 1-of for those clutch moments is enough here. We've also got 3 Lurrus. And we're about to get to why, but any deck that's going to sacrifice a permanent every turn to Doom Foretold could really use something like Lurrus as a recursive machine to bring things back over and over again to make sure you always have things to sacrifice. This deck in particular puts it to better use and will we'll get to that in just a second. So our 2 drops, 4 Birth of Meletis, 4 Acquisitions Expert, and 4 Elderfang Disciple. Now, Birth of Meletis is obvious. It gets us our land that we need to curve out, right? Which is especially important in this deck because you want to hit your 5th land on turn 5. And typically it's hard to do that without scrying or manipulating your deck in some other way. So Birth helps us get that 5th land. That's usually the land that's just out of reach. So we don't have to wait until turn 6, turn 7 to curve out into Tergrid. But also it's something we can sacrifice to Doom Foretold. It gives us an early blocker with the 0/4 wall. And if we don't sacrifice it to Doom Foretold, it can give us a little bit of extra life against aggro. So amazing card. We can bring it back over and over again with Lurrus to generate repeat value and always have something to sacrifice to Doom Foretold. But it's the combo of the Acquisitions Expert and the Elderfang Disciple that is really what we're trying to abuse with Lurrus. So Elderfang Disciple's a 1/1, comes into play, each opponent discards a card. We can bring it back with Lurrus. We can keep making them discard cards. This means in the early game, we have something that can start to reduce their hand size, but then something we can bring back later after Tergrid's on the field to try to steal stuff out of their hand, which is awesome. And then Acquisitions Expert is even better now coupled with the Disciple, because Elderfang Disciple is an elf cleric. So because it's a cleric, if you have both in your hand, you play the Disciple first, and then when you play the Expert, you now get to see 2 cards from your opponent's hand and choose one of them to go away. So it just adds a little bit of edge value to Expert here, gives us better card selection with the discards, and sometimes if we're playing it in the late game with Tergrid out, that makes all the difference because they might have a spell or something that they want you to hit with the discard so that you don't get it, and now they have to show you 2, and they have to show you one of those permanents they don't want you to hit, and then you can get it with Tergrid. So cards absolutely nuts, combined with Disciple, especially in this shell. Our 1-drops are specifically going back to ways to protect Tergrid. Like I said in the beginning of this deck tech, it's just a matter of getting Tergrid to stick on the field. So there are plenty of ways that this deck takes advantage of, like being able to make them sacrifice or discard the turn that you play Tergrid without having extra mana to do it. But the other way we try to make sure we can utilize Tergrid's ability is just to make it so that they can't kill her. And we do this with 3 copies of Alseid. We do this with 3 copies of Alseid of Life's Bounty and 4 copies of Selfless Savior. So obviously, if we get these early, we can curve out with them. They're another permanent on the field we can sacrifice to Doom Foretold, but also we can use them to keep Tergrid alive. And even just that 1 extra turn that we can keep her alive, so that we untap with all of our mana with her on the field, and then we can start playing spells that make them discard and sacrifice. Even if they kill her after that, we've gained so much value that it doesn't matter. So just keeping her alive for that 1 turn can make all the difference. But what makes it even crazier is we have an engine going with Lurrus, right? So we can sacrifice the Savior or the Alseid to protect Tergrid, and then just bring it back with Lurrus. Heck, in the early game, we can even just sacrifice one of these to protect Lurrus itself, so that we can keep Lurrus around, and then we can just bring it back onto the field afterwards. So the engines that are going on in this deck are nuts. It's things that have been utilized in other decks in the past, but we're combining them in a way that's just creating a ton of synergy and absolutely going over the top. To round out the deck at the top end, we've got 2 copies of Elspeth Conquers Death, because it's a way for us to get rid of problem permanents of theirs, while also giving us a way to get back Tergrid if they do happen to kill her. But it's also just, it's another permanent, right? So it's another thing that we can sacrifice to Doom Foretold if we're desperate, if we have to. And then we've got 1 copy of Kaya. Kaya can be really great in this deck. It's sort of like having another Elspeth Conquers Death, except it has some edge value in other ways. We can use her uptick to protect some of our creatures like Tergrid and Lurrus, so that if they die, they go back to our hand. But we can also use Kaya's uptick to put them on things like the Expert, the Disciple, or the Selfless Savior, or the Alseid, so that we can specifically want them to die in combat or want to sacrifice them for their abilities and then be able to have them come back to our hand and replay them. So Kaya's uptick is awesome. For those of you that haven't seen this card yet, she's a 5-drop planeswalker with 5 loyalty. Her +1 uptick is put a ghost form counter on up to 1 target non-token creature, and it gains when this creature dies or is put into exile. Return it to its owner's hand and create a 1/1 spirit creature token with flying. So lots of value in a deck like this where you're utilizing creature permanents over and over. -3, exile any non-land permanent. This is great because it doesn't have that restrictive 3 CMC clause that the Elspeth Conquers Death has, so you can take out some things that might be harder to take out for the ECD. And then her ultimate is -7. You get an emblem with, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may cast a legendary spell from your hand, from your graveyard, or from among cards you own in exile without paying its mana cost. If you actually do get to the point where you can ultimate with this, it's kind of game over, because at that point, even if they kill the Kaya or the Tergrid, you can use Kaya's emblem to just replay herself or Tergrid and not even have to spend any mana to do it, even if they exile the card. So absolutely busted. The final card that is the extra little spice, and the reason that we add red to the deck, is Mythos of Snapdax. Now, Mythos of Snapdax was pretty early on. It was dismissed, right, as one of the Ikoria cards that wasn't so impactful or wasn't so useful. When would you want to run it other than a Wrath, you know? But in this case, this card is absolutely busted. So 4 mana sorcery, each player chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control, then sacrifices the rest. If black and red was spent to cast a spell, you choose the permanents for each player instead. Absolutely nuts. If they go wide in the early game with a mono-red aggro or a mono-green aggro and they're really just coming at you hard, even if you can't get any value off the sacrifice with Tergrid in play, you can just slam a turn 4 Mythos and make them keep their crappiest creature and get rid of the rest. On the other side of it, if they're playing something like Yorion deck that goes crazy wide in the late game, plays tons of permanents, they've got 3 omens and a bunch of eggs and all sorts of crazy stuff on the field, you can Mythos, and especially if you pay the red, you make them keep their worst stuff, and they lose everything else. But if you have a Tergrid on the field when you do it, you basically just take their entire board. It's absolutely insane. We do it in the games, and it's super nutty. Mana Base just runs pathways that we can play as the red source in the late game if we have enough black and white, and then 1 Savai Triome. And that powers the whole thing. We're also running temples for the scry. We're running snowlands as the basics that we have, just because if we happen to steal something with Tergrid that requires snow mana to use its ability, we want to make sure we have that. And then we're running Moto lands as well, because we can make use of some really good ones in this deck. Now, we've obviously got 3 Agadeem's Awakening and 2 Emeria's Call. The Agadeem's Awakening get back our 1, 2, 3 punch of our Lurrus engine for only 6 mana. And then Emeria's Call is really great in the later game. When we have a Tergrid in play, we can slam it, and the important thing is it will give Tergrid indestructible until our next turn. So even if we don't need the 4/4 flyers, just being able to make sure we have another whole turn cycle with Tergrid in play can just spell complete doom, no pun intended, for the opponent. Absolutely nutty. But the modal cards that don't see as much play that we can make great use of in this deck are 3 Pelakka Predations, which if we have to play it as the land, we can, or we can play it to selectively make them discard their best permanent after Tergrid's on the field and just take their best thing out of their hand. Absolutely nuts. And then we run 2 Malakir Rebirth. And Malakir Rebirth is really great in this deck because if they try to kill anything, including Tergrid, we can protect it. But what's especially good about Malakir Rebirth is if we use it to protect something like an Acquisitions Expert or an Elderfang Disciple, now all of a sudden, not only are we protecting it, but that thing is coming back into play. and re-triggering its enters the battlefield ability so we can steal more stuff. So deck is absolutely insane. I'm having a ton of fun with it, and I think it's just really great versus this meta. You're going to see some nutty games up ahead, so let's not stall anymore. Let's jump into the games. All right, we keep this. This is good. Birth gets us our 3rd land. We've got a Savior. We've got a Soul Shatter. We can hold them off. I'm going to try something a little spicy today. We're going to put that away. We want land. Alright, so we'll play the Pathway on black. We'll Birth, we'll get a Plains. Now what I really want to try to do is put Yorion in our hand, slam down the Lantern side of Tergrid, use it, and then on my next turn, use it again, slam Yorion, flicker it, bring it back into play as Tergrid. Thieves Guild Enforcer. A. We don't like it. Let's see what's in their hand. Nothing. It's playing Deathtouch. Well, we're okay for now. Is he gonna play the Finn? Probably doesn't want it to die. I think we save up for a Mythos. I think that's right. I'm gonna play this as a Lantern. So we're just trying to bait him to fill up the board here so that we can Mythos. Go ahead, hit me for 3. Lantern him. Put Yorion in our hand. Play a Savior. We're slow rolling this. 1 card left in your library? I didn't see that part. Oh man. That's bananas. Pass turn. Now we can double block. If we want to. If he only attacks with the Enforcer, we're not going to bother. Alright. So we'll Lantern him. It's my turn. He gonna try to ram through. It's not gonna work. We got the Savior. We've got the Savior. He's trying to just go wide with Deathtouchers. So we exile the Lantern. Now we've got Tergrid in play. Doesn't matter what dies. We just have to not get 10 poison counters here, and we pretty much win. Slam Spin. That's fine. That is fine. He's gonna have a very bad day right now. A very, very bad day. Why would it save our black? Oh, because it has to. We've only got the 2 white. Well, good game. Give me all your Deathtouch guys. And there you have it. Mythos for the win. I was kind of surprised he chose to keep Tajuru Blightblade, to be honest. I didn't think he would. Well, we'll Soul Shatter. We'll take his big old nasty. This looks okay. It's not great. We don't have all the early plays. But we have Scry and we have 2 black and 2 white. Kind of have the perfect land with the Scry. With something we can play early. So I think we're good. Do we take the pathway? Could take the pathway. Guarantees a turn 4 Rankle and the ability to use Mythos for what we need to use it for. Yeah, let's keep it. Normally I'd scry past that this early. So we're both wiped out for different reasons. Right, Luke? Oh. But hey man, I've had those weekends in the past for sure, so I get it. Alright, we'll play the Alseid. Resolve. End turn. Hello. I don't know about you guys, but for me, January went by so fast. Like, so fast. It was like Christmas was just finishing up, and then all of a sudden Kaldheim was releasing, and then it's February. Oh boy. Well, we got our Tergrid. throw him a swerve here. I think the right play is to play Rankle. Because either he kills it, and he has one less removal spell for our Tergrid. Or he doesn't kill it, and then it's on the board when we play Tergrid next turn. Does he have the removal for Rankle? Eradicator Valkyrie. Oh, wow. Hexproof from Planeswalkers. Do we just ECD it? I think we just ECD it. Just draw. We're okay filling up our opponent's hand because we want them to have things. Because then we have more things to steal. Oh, he took Rankle. Well, at least Rankle doesn't untap, right? Let me think. What's the right play here? Could Doom Foretold. He would have to sack the Rankle, because if he sacks the War, we would get back the Rankle. If we slam Tergrid, he just attacks us with Rankle and makes us both sack a creature, right? Then again, we can always Malakir Rebirth. No, we can't. We don't have the black. Shit. Well, we always get Tergrid back with the ECD, right? Yeah. We're gonna do it anyway. If he's dumb enough to make us both sack, Tergrid's ability will still trigger, even though Tergrid has to be sacrificed. And we'll get the Rankle back. If he just removes the Tergrid, ECD will bring it back next turn. So I think we're pretty good either way. I would have preferred to have a black mana up, so we could protect Tergrid with the Malakir Rebirth. Thank you for the fabled passage. We'll grab Swamp. And now we can Malakir Rebirth. Oh man, that was so good. That was so good. Is he gonna try to make me sacrifice my Tergrid? Dude. Do it. Make us both sack. Make us both discard. Do it. Do it, you goon. Do it. Do it. Oh. That was so bad. He just got blown out. He just got so blown out. Malakir Rebirth is so good in this deck. Discard a card. honestly, I'm going to discard Yorion. I don't need it. Everything else is gold. Actually bring Yorion back with the ECD. Get some triggers. Get the Bone Crusher. And we'll get whatever you discarded. Nice. Grab another land. Increase the chances of drawing a non-land next turn. Grab the swamp. Bring back Yorion. Nope. We don't want to use it at all. Submit 0. Submit 0. Let's do this first. Let's attack for 8. Now if we Doom Foretold, he sacks the Rankle. We get the Rankle. Now he'll sack the Crone War. We'll get the Rankle. And then he'll have nothing to sack. Thank you. Alright, so we're definitely not... We're not going to Doom Foretold. It's pointless. It's also kind of pointless to Elspeth's Nightmare, right? Well, I guess ripping a card out of their hand isn't bad. Let's just put it on the field. Crone War goes away. We get it. Sure. That way we can sack it to our Doom Foretold. This deck is so gross. I love it. He's just playing Rakdos Sac. And this deck destroys Rakdos Sac. I got you, boy. Good game. Thanks. We'll take, what do we want to take? We'll take Egon. Go ahead and play your Predator. Sack it to our Doom Foretold. Well, we definitely don't want it to become Egon. Go ahead and take Valky. But it's just until end of turn. It's going to turn into Egon. And what? Attack us for 6? Goodbye. Goodbye, good sir. This is keepable. We can slam the Awakening turn 1. Turn 2, Birth for a Plains. Turn 3, have Soul Shatter to hold up. Or, alternatively, we could lose 3 life to play the Savior turn 1. And then curve out the same way. That might be better. Either way, we keep it. Hey, DJ. think we'll do it. There's also a chance we draw into another land. I think having Doom Foretold and essentially being only one land away from playing it means we gotta just go for it, right? Gotta just go for it. We'll grab Plains, and then we'll swing in for 1. So the question here is, do we play the Doom Foretold if he doesn't drop a permanent? Probably not. Holding up Soul Shatter seems bad here. We're going to play out the Expert, and then we'll probably just play Emeria's Call tapped. Get rid of the Ugin. We'll play this up-tapped. And then we'll swing in for 1. Alright, end the turn. Well, he's clearly playing blue-white control. Jumbrella. Trying to drag out the game. Probably got Doom Scars and instant speed counterspells. Now my gut says he would have foretold the Doom Scar on turn 2, having that 2 mana, but he probably wants to keep it open to potentially counter things, which is probably why he didn't. So if I had to guess, next turn he'll have 5 lands. He'll probably foretell the Doom Scar and then leave mana up to counter a big threat. So what we want to do is get that big threat onto the field now.
Wish you had a fraction of
Swing
my
2.
power.
And do we make him discard a card? Yeah, probably. Mythos. It's not looking like he's going to have very much to Mythos. When he does finally get a permanent out, it's going to be one big bomby permanent. He's not going to fill the board. So a card like Mythos goes way down in value. Plays a clock. That's fine. So now he's got counterspell mana. Plays Plains. So what? He'll probably try to counter Doom Foretold if we play it. Yeah, we're going to hold it in hand. Discard the land. We don't really need it. We'll keep Doom Foretold in our hand until he drops something that's a big threat.
You think too much.
Because then the Doom Foretold being on the board helps us deal with it, potentially over a couple turns. But also he'll be tapped out from the big threat. Alright, Birth. Resolve. Plays the land. Right. And a Baneslayer. That's not bad. Do we try to kill the Baneslayer? I guess we could... What? Doom Foretold? and have a few turns where we can actually do some things. Could actually Soul Shatter at instant speed. That might be better. Yeah, let's do that. Sure. Let's Pelakka Predation. Get a look at his hand. Shatter the Sky and Brazen Borrower. Let's get rid of the Borrower. We're gonna uptick, even though it's kind of scary to lose the Doom Foretold.
We're doing things my way.
Now we can ultimate Lily. He has to draw an answer to Lily, or he's in rough shape. Dream Trawler. Well, I guess that's something. Guess that's something. How do I want to do this? We'll do that. Next to combat, we'll grab Baneslayer Angel.
Rise and shine, my obedient.
First strike's pretty good. We're gonna hold it back for the Dream Trawler, though. Well, we can always just get it back, right? Thing is, the Dream Trawler's just gonna gain back whatever life, whatever damage we do. But every turn we wait, he's a turn closer to getting his Doomscar or his Shatter, so we should probably just take advantage of this and go in. Alright. End turn. He obviously needs to attack. He needs to draw a card. Another Dream Trawler? Wow. So maybe he doesn't attack. Maybe he'll double block. Nope. He's just going for it. Well, maybe now we do hold back the Baneslayer. Play this for red. Next to combat.
My dominion over death is complete.
No attacks. We'll play Yorion. We'll flicker the Acquisitions Expert. Get rid of that card in his hand. And then hold back the Baneslayer Angel. To block his Dream Trawler. Because first strike. You can't really afford to attack. Doom Foretold. Ha ha ha. That's what we wanted. Let's go. Let's go. Oh. He's just gonna put counters on it. He's trying to fill up his hand so bad. Do we have any creatures? The emblem lets us grab creatures, right? So I guess we might as well give something indestructible. But does it matter what? We still probably can't attack with Baneslayer. We have to hold it back too. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. Right? Next to combat.
I bet you've never seen
No
necromancy
attacks.
this good.
End turn. Sack something. Nice. Oh, he sacked it before he did the clock. Very, very clever. Resolve all. Still got a first striker. I've still got Selfless Savior. He needs to what? ECD my Baneslayer Angel? Which is probably what he'll do. But even if he does, like, we have the Doom Foretold and we have the Emblem. If he wipes the board, we just get everything back over the next couple turns with the Emblem. If he does targeted removal, then we still just have things to sack to Doom Foretold, which will make him sack his things. So, like, does he not realize this is first strike? Come on. Why didn't he just do that ahead of time? Why didn't he just do that ahead of time so that I couldn't have blocked? Thanks so much for checking out my channel. We are pushing hard for that 1,000 subscriber mark, so please consider subscribing. Hit that button. There's a circle in the middle over there. Hit that. Subscribe. Tell all your friends to do it. Thank you. Also, give this video a like so more people can see it. If you'd like more PlayStation and console game coverage, we've got that down below. And if you'd like more Magic the Gathering coverage, there's more of that somewhere off over that way. Do all the things.